Welcome to a very special episode of the Tilehurst podcast. Joining myself and Ross tonight is the one and only Robbie Savage. Robbie, first of all, how are you, mate?
Very well. I'm glad to be known now as Charlie Savage's dad, which is
Yeah,
which which was
well,
my
we're obviously going to make reference to Charlie, but we'll obviously get into the kind of season you've had as well. Debut managerial season as well. Unreal performance from your team. And if you get a bit distracted, or Robbie feels like he's distracted, he's got Barca Inter on, so he's all good. He's all good. He's got it
yeah.
on in the background.
That's what my wife's
Um,
watching downstairs as well right now. Is the same game. Robbie, I actually showed my wife this morning. Charlie's her favorite player on the team, so I showed her a
But
picture.
not yours.
Yep. Hey. We'll talk about that in a bit. We'll talk about that. But I showed her a picture of you in your Manchester United academy days and
Oh,
him together, and the I think it was the hairline together is just perfect in both of them. It's great to see across the two.
it's a great photo. And listen, the special moment was when Ronaldo was pictured with Charlie in training, and they're having a chat.
Yeah.
To Charlie about I used to kick him. Ronaldo was great with him. So again, what an experience for the young man to train with the likes of Ronaldo. And but for Ronaldo, it just goes to show his longevity. Playing against me and then training with my son. Well, Charlie was training with him. Let's not get carried away.
Right, right.
Well, listen, before we start, massive thanks as always to Z Films. He sponsored this one and every other one we do. Really, really, great end to the season off the pitch for Reading, and a great season, on it really, all things considered. We're going to get straight into it, really, Robbie. We're going to kind of take you back in time, and obviously, we talked a fair bit about the off-field problems that we've had. Obviously you've been fully aware of those. You've been in it, living as a family member of your son who's been in a club in turmoil, basically. How much were you aware of the kind of problems that we had at the time of when Charlie signed, and did you think it would get as bad as it did? Over the last couple of seasons since he's been with us.
I remember how it all came about. Obviously, Mark Bowen, who was my coach at Birmingham, my assistant manager when he was at Wales and at Blackburn. Great guy, and instrumental in my career. And obviously, he was the Reading the director of football. And if you think of the squad that he's built along with Brian Carey, for the cost, free transfers, pulling every string possible to get players to the club. The job he did, along with Brian, was remarkable. So I remember the conversation Charlie had. I think it was 3 years left at Manchester United. He went on the tour with the first team, had an incredible tour, and then he went on loan to Forest Green under Big Dunk, and Big Dunk was great with him. Forest Green were great with him, and he came back in that pre-season and said, "Listen, Dad, I want to go out and play senior football. I don't really want to play in the 21 football." I thought it was really brave. Shows his character.
Yeah.
And then Mark got in touch with myself, said, would Charlie be interested? I spoke to Charlie. We went down to Reading's training ground. I think at Bearwood, when we all went in there as a family, we couldn't believe how good it was. Premier League setting, brilliant facilities. And I think when you get players to Bearwood, automatically they think, wow, what an unbelievable place to train on a daily basis. And for the size of the football club. So I remember the deal was done with New Era, Charlie's agent, where Rio is, Jamie Morley, who I played with, fantastic agency. And Charlie and the group decided to sign. So I remember sitting upstairs at Bearwood, the forms were done. And I remember Wingy was there with his family and his agents, and both had signed on the same day. And I remember getting home or the next day, and the deal hadn't gone through because of whatever, was happening at the time. So we were a bit in limbo, and we actually didn't know if Charlie was going to be a Reading player or not. So we didn't really understand, how bad the situation was. But inevitably, it worked out brilliantly well.
Yeah, definitely. That's casting back in time, of course, it was like a registration thing they were like
He
wanting to go
turned around
about
and
that
said to
time.
you, like, oh, actually, I regret this, Dad. Like, I don't want to be here anymore? Or did you say to him, look, this is a nightmare? Because, you know, very, very small situation compared to it. But if it was my son, I'd be like, we gotta get you out of here. Like, this is insane. You know, when we're saying this as fans of the club, right? You know, we're stuck with it, as you know, in terms of football fans are just there for life. But from if it's your son and you're in that situation, like, how did you manage those emotions and those feelings and that protection element of being a father?
Yeah, it was difficult, especially for his mum. You know, his mum was, you know, he's going to be moving away. We were unsure if the registration had gone through, what was going to happen. Could he go back to Manchester United? What we were, you know, it was a bit of turmoil for the young man. But you know, he's got a very sensible head on young shoulders. You know, he went to MGS, got nine A's in his exams. Really thinks about stuff, well educated. And he said, no, Dad, listen, I made the decision. I want to stick at it. You know, but it was out of his hands. It was out of his hands. And that was the difficult thing, that he was had his bags packed. You know, I remember when I went to Manchester United at 15 and my mum and dad on the doorstep, tears were streaming down their faces. I went to digs and it was a difficult day. And obviously, you know, there was tears here when your firstborn leaves. But we knew he was in good hands. Lynn at the football club was amazing. And, you know, we talk about people behind the scenes. Lynn, fantastic. As, you know, everybody behind the scenes was. Brian, Mark, Hunty was magnificent with him at the under 21s. And again, that's why I'm so happy the club is now, you know, being saved. Hopefully goes through very, very soon. I know it's not quite done yet. But, you know, the people behind the scenes, Richie, the kit man, wow. You know, the way he's been with Charlie, Bish, everybody. So we see as family and you know, yourselves, you know, people associated with the brilliant podcast at Reading, is on the field stuff. You know, what I've seen is how people behind the scenes have come together to make that club fantastic, and how they've helped the players. So again, we as a family really didn't know much what was going on in terms of when Charlie was at Reading, but it was a difficult time because you've done a thank you letter to one of the biggest clubs in the world, an emotional letter saying thank you to everybody who got him to where he got to, and then literally he might have been going back there, which was
right, yeah.
which would have been quite remarkable. Thankfully, you know, we didn't get to that. 100, I think it's 96 games later in 2 seasons. He's in a great place.
Is it different now for kind of like the off-pitch, like player liaison kind of role than it was when you were playing? Like, is there more support for the players as humans, or was it always kind of like that for you as well?
Yeah, it was always kind of like that, as in to go 1-up against Barca.
Oh, nice.
No, it was always like that. Listen, as footballers, we're in such a fortunate position that, you know, the care, the well-being, you know, now, you know, mental health is really, you know, more to the fore now, rightly so.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know, you know, what players go through on and off the pitch. We can come on to that a little bit later. But it was all there for me. Maybe not so much, you know, as much as that. But again, as footballers, we're so catered for, well looked after. It's the best job in the world. And, you know, I found it at Macclesfield as well. All you want to do as a manager for your players is give them every opportunity. When they cross that white line, they haven't got a thought in the world other than to get 3 points for their team. So, you know, I had that throughout my career. Charlie's having that at Reading, and I can't speak highly enough for the club. And hopefully I give that my Macclesfield players too.
I mean, you talked about, you know, opportunities there. And, you know, particularly in the early days for Charlie, I remember being on the pod and airing my frustrations about what player under Sellers. Was that a difficult time for you and him as a family in terms of you felt maybe he wasn't getting the opportunities that he should have got in the team when potentially other players were?
Oh, listen, you know, I've heard yourself been a huge supporter of Charlie, and I can really thank you. As Ross has at times, and, you know, the local press. Listen, I get it. Listen, all I've ever asked for me and my son is that people judge him fairly, not because of the name on his back. You know, people think that he's probably had it easier than most to get to where he's got to, but let me tell you, it's been harder for him. when you're the son of a footballer, I'm not going to say famous or a good footballer, a footballer played 350 Premier League games and captain 4 Premier League sides. So I know what it's like to survive a dressing room for 20 years. And word do you survive, because as a footballer, everybody wants your place. When you don't play well, people can come for you a little bit. So again, Ruben, give Charlie an opportunity. And I remember those first, but the 17 games in the 4-2-2, and I know Ross tactics. When I was watching that, regardless of if my son was in it or not, listen, I've tried to play a 4-2-2 at Mac, and for me, it doesn't work in terms of you have to have the players to play that system. And in the 4-2-2, if you're one of the 2 6s, and you got defensively minded fullbacks, you haven't got a ball. All you can do is go backwards or sideways, because the ball narrow between the lines to your 2 10s and your 2 forwards. If your forwards are in the channels and your 10s are narrow, as a 6, you've got one pass. You've either got the ball in behind into the channel, but you haven't got willing runners, or it's hard to slip that ball, a straight ball through the lines to your 2 10s. And if your fullbacks are defensively minded, you've got a sideways pass. And when Charlie and Wingy, who listen, both done great, and Nibsy and Ben, for me, the 4 as a unit, 3 out of the 4, the best midfield in League One in terms of goals, assists. Ben's been unfortunate with injury, but he's a terrific player, and I know he loves to carry the ball. I think they all complement each other really well. So one had to miss out, which Charlie was he's an honest, fair guy, as I am. So in that 4-2-2, I thought, for me as a manager, I'm talking about myself now, that if I'm seeing a formation that's not working, I'm going to go against my principles. Mm-hmm. And my principles at Mac is 4-2-3-1. If that's not working, I'll go to a 5-3-2. I'll change according to the way the game's going and use my subs well. The 4-2-2 wasn't working. And it took a long time to figure that out. And, and as well-respected, good coaches in the coaching team they had, I couldn't understand it. And I just felt as a father, in that period, it just, why weren't we getting the right results? Nibsy can be a 10, but I think Nibsy, and we come to winning duels, balls high up, Ross, Nibsy does that better than anybody. I think I seen the stat today. I think Wingy and Nibsy in the top 5 are the most tackles in the league. So again, I was in a thought process that in the way that Ruben wanted to play, by the way, he's doing great, to get Reading where he got to. But I just think it could have been a better season if he'd have changed the dynamic of the team quicker. Yeah. And maybe not gone against his principles a little bit. But again, there was a time, and when he changed to the 4-3-3 and seen Charlie more as an 8, because Charlie grew up as a 6, his left foot, his passing ability, get on the half turn, playing forward. He couldn't really do that as one of the 6s in that team, because the options out wide, narrow passes, nobody in behind. Yeah. And the diagonal was never on. And then there's a debate, should Wingy have played as one of the 10s, let Charlie be as a 6, then Craig come into the team. So again, I can only thank Ruben for giving Charlie that experience in the first 17 games to play in that system and learn League One football. And what people don't realise, Ross and Ben, is that for Charlie, I've seen this year that people say he's the most improved. I wouldn't say he's the most improved, because he's always had unbelievable ability. What he's done is adapted to League One football. And it's a big difference between being the most improved or having a manager that believes in your ability, puts an arm around you, and gives you the opportunity to make mistakes. I think we got to a point under Ruben Sellers, and I think Charlie mentioned it on the radio with Tim Della, that Hunty put an arm around him and said, listen, Charlie, you will make mistakes. I think, and if you do make mistakes, don't look around to the bench thinking 60 minutes, we haven't scored, if the team are losing, you're going to come off. And I think as for any player, me included, I knew I was going to play every week at my clubs because of my impact on the team. And I knew that if I was having a poor game, the manager would leave me on because he had the trust and the faith in me to continue. I think we got to a point under Ruben that regardless of Charlie's performance, it would be if he'd not scored a worldie, if it was 0-0, and I can go back to numerous occasions that Charlie would be the first one to come off. But then as a player, you would be looking across thinking, it's me again. And then he'd be left out. Where other players who were more senior in the team could try long passes, could try different things, knowing that they're going to play every week. And so I wouldn't say this year Charlie's the most improved player. He's always had the ability. What he's done is he's grown in confidence from a manager who trusts him, and he's got the ability, always had the ability, but it's somebody getting the best out of him by putting an arm around him.
Yeah, I actually completely, as soon as you said, like, I'm not sure if it's like the most improved necessarily. Like, I completely agree. I was looking back today before we got on the call at all of his stats for this season and last season. And then I also watched all of his assists from this season as well. And he was doing things that, you know, that you would think Ruud would want, like winning the ball in the final third and things like that last season as well. He's still doing it now. And I do think that, like, I agree with you. Like, he's always been a good player. He's always had a lot of ability, a lot of like technical ability. And I can definitely see him working as like a, was he working more as like a single six previously as he came up?
Yeah. And Ross, obviously, so I've seen him since the age of 4. And
right.
What they used to do at Manchester United is, if you think you're coming up through Manchester United, you know, Nick Cox, you know, all Neil Harris, all the coaches Charlie had at Manchester United, who, you know, Tony Wheeler, brilliant people, used to get in with the ball, used to play, and then as they were going up through the academy system, they'd always have the ball. So very rarely in a game would Charlie had the ball 5 or 6 times. And I think when you watch Charlie aerially, you know, timing of a jump, he's not quite sure when to time his jump, and, you know, going to close people down. I think he used to go too quick, but now he's adapted to the pace, the physicality, and he'd be going to challenges. You know, he'd be a fraction too late or just diving in. But now, because of an arm around him, he's realised that, you know what, if he misses a challenge or gets it wrong, he'll stay on the park. So again, I think he's adapted to being a League One player. It's taken him a while, but again, he's adapted exceptionally well. And I think, you know, the biggest thing for me was the duels that, and again, you know, because he's so dedicated, he's so professional. The things he does is incredible to be the best he can be, and he's got that from me, because, you know, people have a perception of me, but, you know, I never used to drink. I never used to go out. I used to be in bed a different bedroom 2 days before a game. Made sure I was in bed for 9 o'clock. Always lived my life right to get the best out of me. So I think Charlie's taken that for me, and he's exactly the same, because he wants to be the best on that day for his team. So again, you know, I couldn't be prouder of him, but it's something he's had to learn. But this season, we've seen the best out of him, Ross and Ben, because of the trust and the faith and the belief that he can make mistakes. And if you notice under the new manager, he hardly ever comes off, because whereas, you know, 60 minutes under the previous manager, the manager might bring him off. But I think because of his physicality and his running stats, which him and Nibsy are unbelievable, probably the best in League One in terms of high intensity runs, number of sprints, distance cover. Distance cover is not as important anymore. It's those high intensity runs,
right, where
I think the new manager believes the last 20, 30 minutes of games, that's where Charlie will come into his own. And I think he's done that.
Yeah, he's definitely got your. Sorry, but I'll let you. Chad just said he's definitely got your motor, like your engine. That I remember for your playing days, and I bring that up because, you know, like, obviously when we look at the formation as it's set out, it looks like he's on the left side, and his heat map is a little more on the left side, but he does get all over the pitch. You know, you see him down by the right corner flag, you know, trying to win the ball back sometimes and things like that. But so totally agree that, like, having a manager with his arm around you is obviously going to help you improve. Do you think the starting position on the left side, you know, because he's left-footed, has helped this season, or is that by the by?
Yeah, I think it's helped, because, you know, what Charlie's not got is, you know, because we go through all his stats together, you know, he's so engrossed in it, addicted to being a footballer's obsession, as I am as a manager now in my footballer career. I think what Charlie's not got is if he plays on the right, he's not got the ability yet to go past somebody, with that burst of pace.
Yeah.
Did play on the right, it would be more like, just say he played on the right, it would be more cutting it back onto his left and whipping balls in. But I don't think Reading play like that. So I think on the left, and he's seeing his relationship with numerous left backs and left wingers. And I've heard you talk, all do fantastically well, but because of the right side was when Craigie was fit, Craigie, Nibsy, or Ben, that right-hand side, or Chem, that was constant. Where on the left-hand side, under Ruben, you change fullbacks at a certain time, for me, for no reason, when games were tight. I don't know why that would be, but Ruben will have his own philosophy on that. But because of the amount of change on the left-hand side, Charlie's never really formed a relationship with anybody. Probably Garcia in the latter half of the season, you could see that working. Kamara at times, Kelvin. So the left-hand side does suit Charlie, because if Kelvin comes in, Charlie would go on the outside. We've seen that quite a lot of times. On the last game of the season when Kelvin slipped Charlie in the ball across to Nibsy, Nibsy was just in offside position. So again, I think the left-hand side, because, but when he drifts central, when that ball comes over from the right, he can just open it up on the half turn and get the shots off with his left. I think that is, that, and when Wingy's on the right and Nibsy's, Nibsy's brilliant, and been, I can talk about Nibsy, how good he's been with Charlie and Sam, both brilliant with him and Wingy. So again, I think the left side probably, because as a manager myself, to find a left-footed midfield player on the left is very difficult, and even more so, left-sided centre half as well are very difficult. And if you're going back to, left-footed players or left-handed snooker players, it was the first snooker world championship with two lefties in the final, Mark Williams. So again, find a left-footed player or as a centre half or a midfield player in a three is difficult. So it gives you so much balance. It opens the pitch massively.
Last question before on just like the personnel, sir, because I completely agree with you, by the way, that he has had to deal with so much personnel change. Like, I agree, Garcia and him have started to form a nice relationship where I like the way that they sometimes overlap, they sometimes dive inside. Off the field on the cameras, it looks like he's good friends with Jaden Wareham. Do you think him coming into the team helped Charlie at all? Because I sometimes feel like the way in which he plays is a little bit more to bring in the midfielders than Sam Smith used to do.
Yeah, well, listen, Sam was incredible.
Yeah.
And if we'd have kept Sam, who knows, it might have been different, but it wasn't to be. And Sam, I'm delighted for Sam, because he was brilliant with Charlie, as was Nibsy. They all live in the same apartment block and they were really close. So it was a big blow to Charlie, and Nibsy when Sam left. But listen, whether it's Kelvin up there or Jaden, they both offer something different, Ross, as you know. But Charlie likes playing with both players. He gets on with everybody. Listen, he's a great kid. He now doesn't look at social media. He's because the tough times, people can be horrible. And when at the good times, people could be too nice. So again, he doesn't look at that. I tell him about how you guys speak about him nice. What you do is fair and honest. I've always said, people are fair and honest. And I watch more football than anybody I know, Ross and Ben, from every single level. I'm obsessed with it. Yeah. I read everything. I read all the reports, everything. Ben's been great. Ben was the one who's probably believed in him most. And I said to Charlie, because Charlie was really against me doing pods about him, but because Ben and yourself at times, Ross, have spoke really nice about him, and even if you'd hadn't spoke so well of him, I'd still have done it, because I think it's important that you give back. And so for Ben, I've said, and Charlie's allowed me to do it, but he really doesn't like me doing stuff at all, and I understand that, because it's about him, and the amount of times I've seen his goals on the TV and saying Robbie Savage's son Charlie, it probably got to him, even though he wouldn't admit it. But now, finally, I was at the game and Charlie Savage's dad, and that's what I want. There's nothing more I want for my both sons is for them to have a better career than me, and we wind each other up when I say, well, your dad played 350 Premier League games. He said, yeah, but I played in the Champions League, Dad. So he beats me on that one. So listen, all I want for my two sons is they do better than me, and if they do that, I'll be extremely happy.
Well, they got to beat Italy first, mate. They got to do that. Yeah. I mean, moving away from Charlie, he's obviously had a fantastic season, and I really appreciate what you said there, because we always try and be fair and honest, and that's what this pod's about, really. That's what it's always been about.
Can I jump in there real quick, Ben? Because I'm going to let you answer, but I just wanted to know, Sim he's plotted all of the player ratings for the rest of the season, so I know I get pelters from all over the shop. It's part of why I'm not on Twitter for player ratings. Charlie was 4th this year, highest average. And it was Pereira, who was my player of the season, Bindon, who I'm obsessed with, and then Mbenge. Yeah. So it was close.
And what Charlie said, the lads in the dressing room so close, all the adversity they've suffered. It's times when it's been really tough. And what people don't see as well, and so you think you're a young man moving away from home for the first time. You spend. People say, and there's other players in other situations at clubs when you move away from home. Well, people outside will say, well, he's a footballer, it's the best job in the world, they're getting well paid. But what people don't understand is that if you're not playing football, you're away from home, you've got no family or friends around you, you're not getting spoken to by a manager, the communication is not great, you're spending 15, 16 hours in an apartment in Reading, nobody around you, time to think, sit there, reflect, thinking, what's happening, and if there's no communication from management, when you're having tough times, that can be a real difficult place for a youngster. Then obviously we're on the phone to him, saying, listen, you get your head down, crack on, you'll get opportunities. But I think any young player wants to know where they are and communicated to. I think as footballers, you have thick skin. It's part and parcel of being the job. But I think what Hunty's done the best for Charlie is communicated with him. And I think, you get the best out of players and individuals when you communicate and you're honest and transparent. And that's what I try and do with my group. And at Macclesfield, Ross and Ben, I say to every single one of my players, and my philosophy is that I want to treat every player at my football club like I would want Charlie to be treated. So I always think about that and say, if I was Charlie now, if I was a manager of Charlie, how would I want this to come across? So again, I think, Charlie's had some difficult times, but, I admire him massively. I admire him. There was transfer speculation, if you remember, clauses, but he wanted to stay. He didn't want to go anywhere. There was rumours about, him about a clause in his contract, which he gave up just to play games. So again, all these things, you're thinking at 21 years of age, away from home, in an apartment for 15, 16 hours, you've got the training ground, you've got no friends or family around you. Mentally it was tough. It was tough, but he's come through that now, and that's only made him stronger, as you've seen by these performances. But it boils down to man management of a young man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, moving away from Charlie and just talking about the team and the club. Obviously, you've got more media hats than I've got pairs of pants, to be honest with you, mate. Like you're always somewhere on a pod or on something in terms of BBC or doing commentary on the United games and in the European stuff. Do you, looking at football media in general, do you feel like Reading Football Club has had enough media attention on it from some of those bigger outlets? Or do you think actually, the club itself has probably been done a little bit of a disservice in terms of, I'm thinking of Sky Sports particularly, the way that they might have covered it, or BBC or whoever. Do you think we've had enough coverage from those people, or has it been fair or consistent with what you'd expect, basically?
Yeah, well, I can only speak personally on 606. We've had James Earnshaw who covered the story really well. I think we had a few Reading fans, and I think personally on 606, which I can affect, I can affect that. When you ask for Reading fans, I think we covered the story really well. It's difficult for me to speak about other channels. I think Talk Sport, have done it well. I think Inter might have a penalty as well, by the way. The Reading story, listen, if you remember, we're engrossed in it. So we'll be engrossed in it. You two and everybody associated with Reading will be engrossed, and that will be our sole focus. So again, we might have had more coverage than we all would have imagined, because you'll be looking at every TV channel, every paper, every outlet, thinking, why Reading being mentioned when they probably are, because you're so engrossed in it. But inevitably, they got a penalty into. Inevitably, Ben, there was lots of groups, wasn't there? I think Caroline, the groups involved with Reading have done ever so well. I think there was an applause. Was it the 18th minute of the weekend? I'm not sure. What was that for, Ben? What was it for? It was in the 18th minute.
They do the 18-minute. It's for the points deductions, right, Ben?
Yeah, always. Yeah, but it was a miss gone on, and what we've all been through basically as parents of players at the clubs, but fans and everything else. It's an interesting one. It's dimmer in it. When we're doing a pod every week and we're doing articles and you're talking to Charlie and stuff, I guess it's difficult to be objective with what we think should be being said about the club and what's actually being said. So, it was kind of one of those where I just thought, well, from your opinion, do you think it's being fair?
Well, the outcomes happen now, isn't it, with Mr. Kuig? So again, it just everybody's got to look forward now. The players, there was times, the players, and not so much the players, but the backroom staff. The backroom staff, were they going to get paid? Weren't they? Was it going to be early? Was it going to be late, the payments? But inevitably, they've got through it. And looking ahead to next season, hopefully they can have another fantastic season. 2-0.
There we go. Nice.
There you go. See, there you go.
I'm gonna have to stick this on in the background.
Thinking about the games that you've seen on the pitch.
Yeah.
Favorite Reading game this season?
I've never seen Charlie score live.
Really? Okay.
Never know. But obviously, because my wife's seen him score against Harborough in the FA Cup. It's difficult for me because you imagine Ross and Ben, the anxiety, the nerves, the emotion on a Saturday. So I'm pleased for the half-12 games. Lots of Reading fans or media might not be, but I like the half-12 games because I can watch it. And then I have my game at 3:00. But there's been times when I've managed at 3:00 and Charlie scored, and somebody shouts down on my son behind me, Charlie scored, and it's wow, the feeling. And I'm always looking at my phone on a match day because I'm thinking of Charlie, but then I'm thinking of my team and tactically. And listen, we've been that good this year. I could have probably looked at my phone all the way for 90 minutes because my players, what they're doing. I could just say go out there and play, and they do it. It's religiously. They know exactly the way we play. They know what to do. They know the patterns, they know the movements. And it's 109 points. But there's times this season when I'm looking at my phone, thinking he scored, or looking at different apps, how many passes, how many final. So I'm so, and if they lose it, my mood comes down. But I think his goal against Colchester in the cup, I think for me, that's the goal of the season. Listen, I know Wingy's goal was it against? No, listen, Wingy. Can I just say Wingy? Wow, as a 6, is he further up? But his passing, his influence on that team. Wingy, fantastic player, as is Nipsey, Tyler. Listen, they're all, and we'll speak about that quickly later. I've done unbelievably well under the circumstances. But for me, the reason why Charlie's, for me, was the goal of the season, because when you hit a half volley, when it's behind you with your weaker foot, and it's still rising when it goes into the net, That's a very, very, very difficult thing to do. And the reason when you analyse it is if you said to any player in the world, right, you've got to do that technique with your wrong foot. Under pressure, you're losing the game, you need to get a goal to get back into the game. You do that. Yeah. How many times out of 100 could they do that? Where I think most professional footballers in the world could pick a ball up from 25 yards and smash into the top corner. Right. Wingy and Charlie have done that numerous times. But in terms of the technique, you know, and you look at it, that for me was the best goal, because that there, people don't do that very often. And it was such a strike, half volley, going towards your own goal to hit it, and it's still rising. That for me is the best goal of the season.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, that's the one I picked out when I was watching back through some of Charlie's stuff earlier. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
But the game, Ross, the game, Ben, the game I loved, and the game which meant a lot to me was the home game against Wrexham. I was there. You know, and I've seen teams this year, and Wrexham have gone up, and listen, they've got a way of playing, an effective way of playing. You know, they beat us 3-0 at their place, and this I'm a Wrexham fan as a kid. Used to watch them, you know, all the time. But for Reading to beat Wrexham, and Reading to beat the teams who you might think, oh, they might struggle here. You know, so the Wrexham game and the way they play, the intensity they run that game, you know, was incredible. So the Wrexham game for me was a huge one. I loved Shrewsbury away. You know, Chem, you know, off air, we talked about Chem's dad. You know, I jumped on Chem when Chem scored the third.
Yeah.
So again, this and the Harbour game in the FA Cup was quite an incredible game. So I think it's been a wonderful season to finish 7th, and we were so close. And the question you'd ask yourself, is that group and the club ready to be a championship club? I'm not so sure it is. So I think with the news of the final day, with the club, Rob Couey getting it and staying in League One, I think probably was the best thing. And I know you two might think it would have been great if we got to the championship, but I don't think that squad's ready. I think the manager has done unbelievable. Listen, I can't thank him enough. And it's not because he's playing Charlie on a regular basis. Listen, if Charlie's not good enough, Noel will leave him out. There's no question about that. But even when Noel's, one of the big things I go back to, and what you need in character, is that I remember Charlie, I think, had just played for Wales, made his senior debut, and then he was playing for the under-21s against Portsmouth. You know, in a game at the training ground behind closed doors, or I can't remember. And he was the best player in the park. And that, for me, shows what a character the kid has got. That if you ask players who have just played for their country, right? So he came back and he played for the 21s against Portsmouth, and he had a fantastic game. And Hunty was there then. And I think from that moment I think Hunty respected him massively, because, you know, in my time, we had the reserves, and, you know, a lot of and I don't think, you know, could Charlie count himself as a senior player then? Because he's still young. Listen, we forget he was only 21. He's 22. He was 22 on the 2nd of May. But because he played for Wales, because he played the Champions League, because he's had such experiences with me as a father, going to games when he was this big, watching me, people seeing him as a senior player, even though he's so young. And I think what that Reading group is, we see them as senior players. Tyler Binden, listen, wow, what a player. Lovely family. We see him now as a senior player because the amount of games they've played. And through chaos, it's enabled these young players to become senior players so early. So if you look at all the young players now at Reading, how many senior games have they had where some players now playing under 21 football haven't played senior football? This group of players have gained so much through chaos and opportunity through chaos. And that opportunity may never come around, because there's players in the Premier League now, 21, 20 years of age, going to on loan. They're not playing games. But at Reading, it's give these young players a platform, and managers believe in them through, maybe not through choice, through necessity because of circumstance. These players have been able to flourish, progress, gain confidence, adapt to senior football, and probably be in the best position they've been in, and a better position than most teams, most 21s at Cat 1 level. And you can see what the Reading Academy, we can go on, what the players they produce. So again, it's an unbelievable scenario to be in through, a chaotic situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean it's been a crazy season, and it's been it's been bonkers overall.
Been a crazy 5 years.
It's been insane. As a result of that craziness, regardless of what, because we're all realistic, we know football is a business. Opportunities arise out of nowhere, all this kind of stuff. Will you always have kind of a special place in your heart for Reading Football Club in terms of what Charlie's achieved in a short time, in terms of, you said, how kind of staff and the fans have been with him, and just your overall perception of the club? Will it always be important to you, even when Charlie moves on?
Yeah, listen, they've looked after my son incredibly well. The fans. Let's be fair. That he's had to earn it. He's had to earn the right, and rightly so. And any new player at a football club, and he come with high expectation. Expectation coming from Manchester United with a name on his back can hinder some. Let's be totally honest, because all the way through his young life, if I turn up at a football match and I'm there, everybody automatically sees me and expects Charlie to be the best player in the park. And he's had to live with that all the way through. And if at times, even early on in his younger days, because physically, I was one of the smallest when I was growing up. So physically, Charlie, in the academy system, where if you know football and you can see football, I'd be at games in the academy system and he'd hit a pass and it would be the right thing. It would be exactly the right thing. Because of his strength, he couldn't get there. He would fall too short and would hit the first man. But the pass was there. And you can see that. So I knew that physically, when he got the strength, that would become natural. And you can see it now, the way he plays, that the biggest thing I think Charlie has, which not many people might notice, is, listen, he can get the ball in the half turn, he can ping it, he can shoot, he can do set pieces. But when you watch closely a game, the amount of times, because throughout the academy system, because he wasn't physical, he didn't want to get, clattered, he would move the ball very quickly. So the amount of times he does a little first time layoff into a little bit of space or to somebody, like the layoff for Wingy at Bristol Rovers on his right foot. That for me is one of the passes of the season. When it comes across, Wingy dummies it, goes forward, bounces, and he just like cushions it with his right foot into the path. That's beautiful. And that pass was underestimated. How a lot of people will be seeing a 70-yard ball spread, over so many yards. But that pass there for me, and there's little passes he does into midfield first time, just to give himself a yard, that what makes him a little bit different for me. And not the 30-yard strikes. Listen, they're great, of course. Matto goes outside the box, winging him, have a competition most weeks. And the interesting thing is, and the difficult thing for the previous manager was when you've got 4 fantastic players in Ben, who's different to Charlie, who carries the ball, and I understand that in tight games you might need something different, ball carrier to commit. And I think, when I've seen Reading play, what I like is like a bit like, when Tyler gets the ball and you put your foot on, you're waiting to draw people out and they play. And I think Ben could have done that high up the pitch if it wasn't for his injury. And I think we missed Ben. We missed Ben in certain situations, and and at times as a player and as a manager, I found this out. Because I've got 18 starters. Towards the end of, and I can only pick 11.
Right.
And what you find sometimes as a manager, sometimes you'd rather have situations where if you've got a player suspended, if a player gets injured, it makes your decision easier for you. And as a player, you think, "Oof, I'm a bit lucky there." So I've never believed in luck. But in times, I'm now realizing as a manager, you do need a little bit of luck in terms of situations. If you've got, just say if you've got 12 players all in great form and somebody's being suspended, a suspension's coming up, it gives you an out.
Mhm.
So again,
Yeah. My hands are tied.
yeah. So again, with the four midfielders, with Charlie, Reading have with Charlie, Nibsy, Wingy, and Ben, four fantastic players, and only three can play. There are options to put Nibsy one up or Ben as a 10 or Ben up, but I think the three of them suit a three. Ben on the right can carry it, but Nibsy, what was it, 16 goal, 100 appearances, brilliant. His dynamism, his energy, winning the ball high up, especially in the high press. So again, I think, with Ben getting injured, it's so unlucky for Ben, but that gives Charlie an opportunity. And again, he's taken that opportunity. But let me tell you, there was how close they are as a group, and Nibsy especially. I remember one time Nibsy got injured. I think it was his knee. He went for a scan. And I think Charlie wasn't starting. And Nibsy rung Charlie on the way back from the scan. He said, "Listen, you're preparing, right? Get ready. You're going to be playing tomorrow. I'm injured." And I thought, wow, do you know what? For somebody who just been told he's going to be out for 3 or 4 weeks, to ring his mate and say, "Listen, get prepared, be ready." But Charlie was. I don't think I'm going to be playing. That shows how close that group are. Charlie felt for Ben when Ben was injured. They were so close. So again, usually in a dressing room, it's everybody for himself, but you're a collective also. But that just goes to show how close and how tight that group are, and how how they all get on.
Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely.
Love that. That's really good to hear. Really, really good
I
to
think it's
hear.
part of I think it shows on the pitch, and it's part of what I mean. People are talking about how much they love this Reading team in comparison to kind of like any Reading team over the last 10 years, really. I think fans connect with that, and then you can kind of see that they are friendly. So I mean, I agree with you that I don't think they were quite ready for the championship, right away. But with this core, with this group, what do you think Reading can achieve in the coming seasons?
So I've seen, I'm not sure. And I know Charlie's got 2 years left. Nibsy's got one. Wingy's got one. I think there's quite a lot of players out of contract. So
Yeah.
one of the hardest things as a football club is retention. I've just retained 12 of my players, and they all want more money because they've done well. So recruitment, you live and die by your recruitment. And the recruitment that Mark Boyd and Brian Carey did for this group was quite incredible. Retention is also very difficult, and now you're seeing the players out of contract. Retaining players will be difficult. Because the season they've had, and with the numbers they've got through, availability and through, getting minutes, obviously players will want more money. I think, but what comes first? Does opportunity come before money? I think for me, I've always said to Charlie, opportunity becomes before money. Money will come with success. So I took that throughout my career. Listen, everybody wants to be paid millions and millions of pounds. We get that. But for me, at such a young age, opportunity comes before money. And I think, Charlie's had that mentality. And this group, with a few additions, and if they can sign, retain players, they've got a great opportunity. And the question for you two, because I'm interested as well, because I've seen firsthand, reactions when this group lose or draw or don't get the result expected. I think when Reading win a game of football, the celebrations at the end with Mbengue is fantastic. And I agree with that, because for this group, what they've been through to get 3 points. For the group, the back four, I think before the start of this season, or last season, hardly played a single senior game. For the amount of free transfers, for players in the group to have in their first senior games in senior football in the course of this season also, they are going to lose games of football. They will lose games consecutively. And I think there was an over-exaggeration from some in the media when they'd lost. When you look at it and strip it down, that with young players, and let's be fair, if that team, just say if you took Nibsy and the ones over 21 out, that team was in the under 21 Premier Division, it might not win it. But this is a team here with a few older players competing, beating teams with significantly bigger budgets in an unbelievable environment against all odds, winning games of football and having a togetherness. And when they lost, I think at times there was an overreaction because it was going to happen. It was going to happen, and it will happen next season because it's such a young group. So again, do you think at times you two may be a bit harsh, or do you think it was fair?
I've definitely been harsh before. So, yeah, I feel like it's part of football punditry is that you say it's fun like going back through and now we have these like social feeds, that have like months and months of back stuff and seeing how quickly a take goes absolutely sour. But yeah, I mean, like, Ben, what do you think?
Of course, like we get. I mean, we've always tried to sort of agree to come on, and you've been so good with us in terms of the retweeting stuff and liking stuff and everything else. Like, we've always tried to be fair, but it's been an emotional time for us. Like, we've been through it massively, and yeah, of course, there were times. I think you even said, "Oh, you were a bit harsh on the pod or whatever," and I listened to it back because I never really listened. I was like, actually, I was out of order. Like I was, and I hold my hands up and say that. There's been times, and we always try and do the pod sort of 48 hours or more after the game so we can, think about it. But yeah, of course, there've been times when I've overreacted, and I think when you look back on the season and when you look at the statistics, as you picked out just a few there, to finish seventh on the points that we got is unreal. It's absolutely
Ben and Ross, and one thing I've learned. So again, if you do a pod so soon after, and it's emotionally charged as a manager, I've learned that straight after the game, if you scream and shout at your players and with emotion, who are you doing it for? You're doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
You're not doing it for any other person to get your emotion, your frustration out. So again, I've learned that to be calm. Listen, at times at half time, obviously not when you've got to win the game of football. I think football's changed where you can't now in a dressing room scream and shout. You've got to be like a game of chess. So again, I think pods and reflection straight after the game, the emotion as fans, because you're so invested in it and being brilliant. The emotion is coming out for yourself.
Yeah. Good point. I think. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, I think you're right with the youth. Like so much youth in the team, you're going to occasionally have inconsistent results or like a performance that feels off.
Look.
What we got?
Look, it's time
all right. How you doing,
mate? You all right?
He's let me do it.
There we go. I love it. You're back up there. Where are you guys? You guys near Manchester?
Manchester. He's just come back now, finishing
It's only 6 hours to get home.
6 hours.
Oh my word.
But again, listen, he'll never know. We got kids. You worry about him in the car, the motorway. It's a long way, but listen, he's done great, and I'm just saying that you've done great, and the team's done.
Can you talk us through the goal? Actually, Robbie, because we talked about this, right? This is a while ago, Charlie, so I apologize. But you scored an amazing goal against Colchester this season. You sort of wrapped you're a professional footballer, so weak foot's the wrong word. But you wrapped your right foot around the ball, on the sort of half volley. Can you talk us through that a little bit? That was an insane hit.
No, I just think over the summer, I always practice my finishing. I go to the Macclesfieldt Stadium and practice. And yeah, I think sometimes it's easy to hit it with your weak foot, but you just kind of just try to connect with it really well, and then I think the touch was actually better before it.
Okay.
The touch is what I was more proud about, but I had a couple of nice right foot goal involvements this year. Had one against Bristol Rovers a couple of weeks back.
I mentioned that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a really lovely ball.
A really enjoyable season, and one that unfortunately we didn't get quite what I wanted in terms of playoffs, but it's been a really enjoyable season.
It's been an enjoyable season from our end too. Don't worry. Regardless of playoffs, I don't think anyone was predicting that at the start of the season. So just to enjoy watching you guys winning games has been, amazing.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, go
Sorry,
on, sorry.
I was gonna say, like we were thinking the other day, like all the players together. We've lost so many players since the start of last season.
Mhm.
Players that would have, a lot of them probably would have played a lot of minutes this year. I think we lost Femi, Sam, Ben for half the season, Michael Craig,
Yeah.
Tom Holmes, Tom Mack, uh, Clinton, who was very good last season towards the end at left back and even right back.
Yeah.
And at one point we had a back four who hadn't even played probably a combined 10 professional games. I think it was, who was it at home the other week and we won? Maybe was it Peter? Can't remember who it was.
Peterborough.
No, but Yids played. It was a different.
Yeah, there was a weird one, yeah, where Yedon was like in the middle.
Yeah.
But then like I think it was like one of the first ones where Shisha was out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like even to win with like such inexperience and to
Hmm.
concede maybe even one goal that game or whatever, it was just we've had an amazing season if you take all the factors. So yeah, it's just been a privilege to play really.
What's been the best thing being part of the team and the club? Like, what have you enjoyed most about this season and your time at Reading so far?
I think the fact that, well, for me personally, the fact that we've got so many young players, I think with young players, obviously, it can be a little bit risky having a lot of young players, but if you think of it as a long-term picture, there's so much more room for growth. So there's so many of us that have got 10 times better over the past year. But I think that's expected. If a 20-year-old is coming from a Premier League team, obviously he's going to have stuff to work on because if not, he'd still be in the Premier League. I think people sometimes forget that with all the players that have come in, obviously it takes 6, 8 months to find your feet. And then once you do, hopefully you just go like this when maybe people that are like 29, 30 in League One will
Yeah.
probably, stay the same. So I think playing with so many young players is just like, it's an honour and a privilege to play with them, really.
Are you absolutely exhausted after playing what 45, 46 games this season, something like that?
Jim, 51.
51, I think.
51. Oh
51.
my word. Okay. Yeah. How exhausted are you?
Yeah, very exhausted to be fair. But not so much in games to be fair. I always found a way to get energy for games. I think
Yeah.
it's more than anything. I think football is very reactionary. You can win 5, 6 in a row and go and beat him for 13, but as soon as you lose one, like you're the worst team in the world, and sometimes that can be a little bit frustrating. And then people try and think they know all the answers. Oh, we should do this. People are tired. We do it, but no. Sometimes you just lose games. Not
Yeah.
too many, but sometimes there's not even a reason. I know XG is a thing, but sometimes they can score off 0.10 and you can miss 1.2
Yeah.
or 3. And
You and Lewis together are make a mockery of XG. Some of the goals with the long range shooting.
even in training, yeah, so I've never played with a better ball striker. Maybe bar Ronaldo in training.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. All right, all
Dad
right.
said that
Fair
at the
enough.
start, to be
Uh,
fair. Yeah, he
but
said
yeah,
that.
Wingy's ball striking is unbelievable, and yeah, I try to learn off him, but to hit a ball as sweet as him is tough.
Yeah.
And listen, where's your dad taking on holiday this year?
Yeah.
We're going to Greece, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm paying. I'm taxi.
That was going to be the next question.
Yeah, well, maybe if I get to the Premier League one day, I'll
You'll
return
treat
the
me.
favour.
Right.
Nice one.
Nice to see you guys.
Good
Thanks.
stuff,
Listen,
Charlie.
yeah,
Thank you
take care,
so
all the
much.
best.
Appreciate you.
Oh, that was lovely. I love that. That was great.
Yeah,
That was-
he's but again, it's what people as you parents, it's the drive up from Reading. Let's say 3.5, 4 hours, taking him 6. So every
Yeah.
time he's on, oh, Barcelona just scored 2-1.
Ooh.
Every time he's in the car on the way up, you worry, you panic. It's especially after the game when you're thinking he's mentally drained, he's exhausted. You're making sure he stops off. You're always worrying about your kids.
Mhm.
So yeah. So any more questions? Any more?
We'll wrap up Mac really. For those of you who haven't followed Macclesfield this season, 109 points, goals scored 109. I mean, that's incredible as a symmetry anyway. For context as well, Worksop Town, 83 points in
They
second
weren't.
place.
I went to watch the game, so I went to watch. They They beat Guys in the playoffs, so that they're now in the National League North as well. So we finished 26 points above them. Good side, but not as good as us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, overall, have you enjoyed? This sounds a ridiculous question, but have you learned a lot about yourself being a manager
It's a
this
relief.
season?
Thing.
I've really enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
it's relief. Every Saturday, the final whistle, when you've won, it's relief. Listen, people expected us to win the league because of the budget. But as you guys well know, you can have big budgets, but what comes with big budgets is the expectancy and the pressure to win at Macclesfield. Before I was manager was big, but it's even bigger now because people want me to fail. But our family have had that all through our lives, where there's certain people want us to fail, and that fuels our fire. And when Charlie was, people being negative about him, it fuels his fire. We as a family, we've got that fighting spirit, and it's ingrained in us. Through adversity, we get stronger. So, when people were questioning me as a manager, me and my team, I use every little anecdote, every little thing said about us, every manager's team talk, every celebration when we've lost. We use that. And I'm not a head coach. I'm a manager. And my biggest strengths is to get the best out of people, in the changing room, like I did with 4 Premier League clubs. And people doubted my ability, and I'm self-deprecating when I speak about myself. But, at school, I was the best player at school. I'd get the ball off the goalkeeper and I'd take the score, 11 goals in a game. But what you have to do, the higher you go, you have to adapt, and you have to be clever, and you have to, know how to get the best out of yourself, but other people. And I was in no doubt that to have a career, I had to do everything right, and I had to play to my strengths. So my strengths were winning the ball back and giving it to better players. And I've got no problem in saying that. No problem at all. Oh, what a save! Oh. What a save! Varsity 82-2.
It's not been on TNT. This is unreal.
You've usually turned the sound off by now.
Yeah.
So my strengths as a manager is, listen, I'm on my A license with the Welsh FA, but my strengths aren't putting sessions on for the group. I always believe in designating better people qualified for the job to do it. So I've got a pro licensed coach, John McMahon, who's brilliant. He's my coach. We'll discuss the session. He'll put it on, but I'll watch it. And if I see anything, I'll step in. And that's what I've learned off my managers. So where I come to, where my strengths are, is that I want players to feel that they can trust me, that they want to play for me, that they'll do anything they can for me. And I think I've got that this season. Tactically, I can see games. I can see it. 27 goals were scored by substitutes this year, the most in the league by 3 times. I think the next was 9. Broke every record Macclesfield FC has ever had. And that's not luck. That's being obsessed with being the best I can be. And I want that for Charlie. Charlie's like that. He wants to be the best he can be. So I've turned down a job. Well, when I say turned down, I turned down a league job in terms of I wasn't offered it, so maybe turned down the wrong thing. But there was inquiries, and I wasn't ready for it because the big question is, when do you think you're ready for a job? I'm really happy at Mac. We got a big season next year, but my traits are that to survive a dressing room as a Premier League captain for 12 seasons, to play 350 games, you've got to have something about you. You need a personality. You are going to have, I think as a footballer, we all realise there's more ups, there's more downs than ups, especially, only so many teams can win stuff. So you've got to realise that what's success as a footballer? What's success? Well, success for me as a footballer is making a career out of football, whatever level. Whether that's National League, League Two, to do a hobby and get paid for it, with the pressure, with everything that comes with it. If you can make a living out of it for a considerable amount of time, yeah, you are a success. To play League Two football, you're a good player, a very good player. To play League One football, you're an even better player. To play a championship football, you are probably the top 2%. To play in the Premier League for 12 seasons, you are in the top 1% of players. I remember on a podcast somebody saying I had a poor career, somebody having a go at me. Well, I'd take a poor career to play that many games when every kid wants to be a footballer. However you get there, however you perform, 2-2 Barcelona just scored. Oh, look at this, Ross.
That game.
Wow, 2-2. Danny Olmo. So again, my managerial career will be dictated to by results. I think where I'll get tested next year is that for me as a manager so far, I've lost 3 league games. I've got an 82% win record and at 2.6 points per game. Where I'm going to be tested next year, and the fan base will be tested, is when we lose consecutive games, and it will happen. So how will I react? I reacted well as a player. So as a manager, when you've got responsibility of a 4,500 fans on a every other week, your staff, 100 staff, players, families, how am I going to react then? So for me, I need to test myself in those circumstances. But then again, people might say, well, you've done unbelievably well now. If somebody high up the pyramid come for you, would you leave? Well, I wouldn't turn my back on Macclesfield now because I don't think I've earned the right, and there's better managers than me. I need to learn how to adapt when I haven't got the biggest budget and I'm losing games consecutively. So I know now as a manager, if I'd have been manager of a team in League Two, League One with the biggest budget, I believe I could have won the league because I've done that at Macclesfield, which is, Ben, you'll know, is probably a League Two club in terms of stature. If I went to League Two or League One now with a team with the 17th biggest budget but not the best players, how could I cope? So I need to go through that next season. Listen, I believe we can win the league next year. We won't have the biggest budget, but again, and we'll lose games consecutively. Now it's up to me to learn next year how to do that. And then after 2 or 3 years, be in a position to have all the experiences as a player and as a manager, and what I think I don't get enough credit for personally is that my name as a footballer, through the media, through doing Strictly Come Dancing, doing all things I've done, is that I haven't expected to go into a league job straight away. I could have been in a league club as a coach and then got catapulted into the job as manager because I was at that club. Well, I haven't earned the right to do that, and I wouldn't want to do it that way. I've always done things the hard way and earning the right, whether that was on the radio, doing 5 Live Sports Extra for a year, just after I finished playing 631 games. I didn't go straight onto the biggest shows. I earned the right. I didn't go straight into the biggest teams in the Premier League. When I say the biggest, any team in the Premier League is a big team. I earned the right dropping out the crew. And now I need to earn the right as a manager through hard work, through dedication, through obsession, and learning, and then getting the opportunity and being prepared when I do go into a club higher. Hopefully it's Macclesfield. Be prepared. If we lose games, I know how to react. If we win games, I know how to react. So again, I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it. I should have done it sooner. But my biggest thing is getting the best out of players and giving of my experiences. Because the one thing I've got is if a player asks me a question, I've got all the experiences and I can hopefully guide them and help them and try and treat them like I would Charlie to be treated. And if I do that, I think I'll do all right.
Yeah, totally agree. My mum's a huge Strictly fan, and she still thinks of you as a footballer first, though. So you're doing good in that regard.
But listen, Gal, and I say this, no, listen, I do read the stuff. I remember seeing young Tom who does the analysis. That he was at the game Tuesday, and I spoke to him because the podcast, the local media, they're the ones as a captain, and now with the local press that you have to give back to. It's okay doing the big channels, everything. It's the smaller ones and the ones who do it for the love of it. They're the ones you have to repay and give your time to more. So again, you've been fair. You've been fair with the group, and listen to the podcast. It deserves more publicity. So again, young James at the Telegraph, Reading Telegraph, or the Chronicle, is it? Does a great job. So again, it's taking the time out to do stuff like this is great, and it's just keep doing what you're doing, guys, because it's brilliant. For me, being away from Reading, I listen to it, because I get the insight from it.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. We love doing it, like you're saying, Ben.
It means a lot. It really does. At times this season, and many times it feels like we're just talking into no one. We're just doing it for the love of the club, really, and the love of the game. So, massively appreciate what you're saying there, and thanks for for all your support, and ultimately thanks for coming on. Like we've been glad to get you on. It's been fantastic to have you on. Nice little cameo from the Starman as well.
Yeah, that was nice. And listen, he's earned it, but he's had to earn it. He's had to earn it, and he's known that, and he's earned the adulation at the standing on the pitch of the weekend. When the crowd was singing, is it the 18? Club
1871.
I was dancing as well, Robbie. Like it's not just
but for me to be there, my last ever game in my underpants at Reading. You asked me the question before. The club will always be special, and when Reading were interested, I'll never forget the way the Reading fans were me on that last game. I danced there on the pitch at half time with Ola. I went in goal at Reading for Derby. So again, the club does mean a lot. I'm a fan of Reading now, and I'll be a fan of Reading forever, because the way they treated my son and the way they treated me in my last game. Whatever Charlie's future holds, and hopefully it's at Reading for the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I can categorically say he loves it. Showed by how he plays, and he's had to get through tough times, no doubt. But now he's in a great place with good people, a fantastic manager who cares about the club, who cares about players. So yeah, he's in a real good place. He'll have a good summer now. I'll take him on holiday. He probably won't pay for the thing. His bedroom will be messy when he gets home now. I have to put everything back into place. He'll leave stuff out in the kitchen. We'll be tidying up after him, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because I love him to pieces.
Brilliant stuff. Robbie, listen, thank you so much for your time on what is essentially a massive game, Barcelona. So thanks for sticking with us. And as I said, thanks for your support. It means a lot, and it's good to know. So thanks, mate.
Brilliant. Top man. Well done, Ross. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Robbie. Massively appreciate it.
Cheers,